So last year I did a video comparing Vault of Glass to Crota's End. I haven't done this yet, and so I'd like to do a video on Vault of Glass versus King's Fall, and why I like both raids for different reasons. So when we discussed Vault of Glass versus Crota's End, there were significant differences between the two. They were designed as very different experiences. Crota's End was designed as a high action raid in contrast to Vault of Glass, which was much more technical. Hive are very ravenous, Vex are very technical, so this made sense. This time around though, we got a more technical Hive raid, although I'm not exactly sure of the reason. You could argue it was a thematic choice, with us entering Oryx's fortress. It's not as high octane of an experience as dropping into the Hellmouth. It was more of a sneaky approach, challenging the leader in his home and getting through his traps, as opposed to storming a castle. I can see how thematically they went with a more technical approach. That, or maybe they designed the raid based off of feedback from Crota's End, although with only about 10 months of time to utilize that feedback, it might have not been entirely based off of that feedback. On a technical and mechanical level, I think King's Fall is better than Vault of Glass. Mechanically speaking, it requires you to really be on your game, have very strong knowledge of what to do and how to execute. Perfect execution of these fights means a pretty fast run of the raid, minus Oryx, who always takes about 10 minutes. War Priest's mechanic is simple, but is pretty high pressure for the player in charge of the aura. One screw up and you're dead. Golgoroth's mechanic is pretty complex, and when done in the way that I think it was designed to be done, is probably the best boss fight in the game. The perfect harmony that everyone must be in gives this real sense of accomplishment when you kill Golgoroth. You have people tanking, DPSing, rotating Golgoroth, knocking down orbs, killing Cursed Thrall. It's a great mix of action and mechanics. The Oryx encounter is entirely execution based. Mess up one of the steps in the list, and you're basically going back to the start. This is why I enjoy King's Fall. It demands really good execution and really solid knowledge of mechanics. Vault of Glass also has mechanics, but while they aren't as technical, they have intensity to them, and I'll explain. When you are playing against the War Priest, most of the time, if you're dying, you're probably not dying to the War Priest. If you are dying to the War Priest, it's likely because you're standing on a plate, which is part of a mechanic, and the War Priest just happened to look your way. Most of the time, you're dying to the mechanic. Most of the War Priest areas have pretty good places to hide as well, so the boss never really feels like much of a threat. With Golgoroth, if you wipe, you probably didn't wipe to Golgoroth himself. You probably died because of a mechanical failure. If you wipe on Oryx, it's likely because your runner missed the platform, and less so that Oryx himself killed you. At least, these have been my experiences. Compare this to Vault of Glass. In the Vault of Glass, you can know exactly what to do, but the boss always felt like a threat. It didn't just feel like you were going through the motions, just going step by step to win. You can know the strategy front and back, but that isn't going to stop the Templar or Atheon from just killing the hell out of you. The bosses themselves were always a huge threat, and it feels like King's Fall didn't replicate that as much because they focused more on mechanics. Now granted, Templar and Atheon felt more like insta-gib style damage than the steady flow of damage that you might see in King's Fall. If you were even looked at the wrong way during Atheon when he was under 50%, you were basically going to be melted. Templar not as much, but Templar was still pretty darn lethal. This is why I really like Vault of Glass. It is always intense, even if you know what to do. It has that small random element on each fight that can throw people for a loop, even if everyone knows what to do. Is it fair to ask which one is better? I don't really think so, because it depends on personal preference. They both did things really well. King's Fall is a great exercise in technical mechanics, while Vault of Glass is a great exercise in action mechanics. All I know is if in the future Bungie can combine the intensity from Vault of Glass and the mechanics of King's Fall, we're going to have some very good raids in the future. I don't know what the point of this video was, it's just something I wanted to talk about, triggered by a recent podcast that I was on. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.